Hello, and welcome to Hedgehog Storytime, where I read my weird original fiction. The following story is part of the Mayhem Cerebrum project, linked to the playlist in the description below. Yes, you have to read them all. No, that is not a request. I'm sure you can probably tell what this episode's about by the title. And the thumbnail. That's right, I did it once. I decided to do it again. It's time for more fucking Liar's Dice, baby! I'm excited. Are you excited? You ready? Okay. This was really my opportunity to just do a Liar's Dice episode without having to worry about introducing characters or making it dramatic for the plot. This one's a little bit more just laid back. There's still stuff that happens. I still use it for metaphors, but it's a little more chill. So without further ado, here is Reunion, or How to Justify Repeating the Same Plot a Second Time. So, which card's that one again? Bake was already half in the bag, nearly sprawled across the surface of one of the Smiling Goat's larger tables. One hand was swirling a glass of whiskey, and the other was keeping his head propped up as he watched the cards intently. Tommy was really having his patience tested here, but he sighed and explained it again. This is the Fool. It represents new beginnings, the start of things. Naivete, sometimes. That one looks pretty beat up, Bake commented, tipping his head back as he drained his glass. Yeah, it comes up a lot when I use this deck for whatever reason. It's the one my dad gave me, so I always try to listen to it. So if they tell you the way your plaid boxes next Tuesday, you listen to them? Jack chuckled from behind Bake, only half paying attention. Tommy knew he was just being an ass, but he played along anyway. Well, you don't usually get answers that specific. You kind of have to see what you get and figure out what they mean for you in the moment. Ah, so you're just using them to bully your self-conscious into telling you what you already know. Jack grinned toothily. You did what in your cup? Bake blinked a few times. Tommy had to admit it was a little odd seeing the two of them thick as thieves like this. The last time he saw them together, they'd been total strangers, and now it was like they'd known each other half their lives. Well, he guessed he'd never really seen them together at all, but that part was still really confusing for him, so he tried to not think about it. A second later, Flora wandered over with a refill for Bake and beers for her and Kuro. As she set the glass down in front of him, Bake groaned. For Christ's sake, woman, just bring the bottle! No way! She shook her head, hands on her hips. I will not have you drinking me out of house and home again. You get one more and then I'm cutting you off. I've got your boss on speed dial, you know. Bake's eyes narrowed to match hers, and he would say the exact same thing. They glared at each other for a few seconds, before Kuro sighed. Should we get started then? So we'll be done before he starts to sober up? Can't yet. Bake flopped back in his chair. We're still waiting on someone. Always gotta be fashionably late, that one. Jack scoffed. That's not true, came a new voice from the door. I always show up exactly when I plan on it. Tommy paused, his drink halfway to his mouth. The voice was different, a little lower pitched than it had ever been before, but he knew it all right. He didn't know why he bothered to turn around, because of course he didn't recognize the red-haired woman in the doorway, but she certainly recognized him. They didn't say who was going to be here, she muttered, turning abruptly away from him, all bravado vanished. Bake and Jack both swiveled between them, looking very confused. You two know each other? We've got some history, Tommy admitted, running a hand through his hair, feeling awkward. She just sighed. Well, I'm already here, so I might as well play. She sat down on the other side of the table, on Jack's far side. Is there any way a girl can get a drink around here? I think I'm gonna need it. Flora ran off to get a requested peach martini while Kuro got the cups and dice and passed them around. There's 6 today, he commented. That's 30 dice. It's gonna be a long game. He turned to Kay, and it seemed Tommy wasn't the only one feeling a little awkward by her presence. Neither Flora nor Kuro seemed to really know how to act around her. Do you know how to play, Miss Kay? He asked. Bake and Jack immediately broke into laughter, and Kay rolled her eyes at them. Please, just K is fine, and I've lived here on and off for the past 30 years, so I hope I know how to play liar's dice by now. Let's start then. Flora sat down and grabbed her cup. Tommy glanced around and noted where everyone was. He was between Bake and Flora. Being next to Bake wasn't great, as even if he was shit-faced, Tommy was sure he shouldn't underestimate him. But it could definitely be worse. He could be where Kay was sitting. Maybe he should warn her. Good luck, he called to her, and his heart broke a little as she eyed him carefully. What do you mean by that? He shrugged. You're gonna need it, sitting next to him. Kay turned, only to see Jack grinning and waving at her. Oh, shit. Tommy shook his cup vigorously, then placed it down on the table and peeked underneath. 2 3s, a 4, and 2 5s. Not a bad hand. That gave him a couple of possibilities. I'll start, Flora said. I think there are 5 3s. Going for a long round, Tommy muttered. I want to see what everyone does. She smiled. That made sense. Of the players at this table, she'd only played with Tommy once, not for years with Bake, and never with Kay. She didn't really know what half the table was going to do. And with her more conservative play style, that information was paramount. Kuro thought for a second. Fine then. I'll say 5 4s. Ugh, you guys are so lame, Bake complained. Okay, good. Then I will continue to be lame. Kay full-on grinned at him, even if it was tinged with sarcasm. Tommy was surprised. He hadn't seen her make a face like that in a long time. 5 6s. 6s, eh? Jack narrowed his eyes, sizing her up. Got a lot of those, do ya? Who's to say? Me, I think. He grinned. If no one else is gonna get this shit started, then I will. 7 6s. Woo, ballsy! Bake grinned. It was that particular one that sent shivers down Tommy's spine. What's up the ante? 9 6s. The rest of the table tensed. Tommy felt bad for the poor bastard who was next. Oh, wait. Shit, that was him. He didn't have any 6s at all, but if Kay, Jack, and Bake all did... Oh, who was he kidding? Jack never had any real strategy, and Kay could lie with the best of them. Either one of them could have literally anything. But hopefully the rest of the table wasn't thinking too hard about that. And hopefully it wouldn't come back around to him again at all. Tommy forced his shoulders to relax and leaned back in his chair. 10 6s. Flora's eyes narrowed, sizing all of them up. I think someone's a fucking liar. 11 3s. 12 4s. Kuro immediately chimed in. He must have been pretty confident in that number, as they were rapidly narrowing in on half the dice. You should go with the flow more, Kay commented. 13 6s. Jack just laughed. Should I do it? He turned to Bake. Oh, I definitely think so. Bake nodded vigorously, only to immediately regret it and nearly pass out. All right, 16 6s. He slammed his drink down on the table. Looked like Bake wasn't the only one who was sloshed. Speaking of, Bake's expression shifted then, as Jack grinned over at him. Bullshit, he said, and the grin rapidly dropped off Jack's face. You goaded me, you fucking prick. Flip 'em and we'll see. Surprisingly, they were closer to that number than Tommy assumed. Kuro had a 1, Kay had a whopping 3 6s, and Jack and Bake, well, they somehow both managed to have the exact same hand. 3 1s and 2 6s. This amused them so much that Bake's betrayal was immediately forgotten, even as Jack gave up the first die of the game. A few rounds passed. Usually Jack's rather chaotic playstyle dominated the early game. Unfortunately for him, he was stuck between Kay and Bake, who both had more than enough experience dealing with his bullshit. Neither of them had emerged unscathed, but it seemed that for the safety of their own dice pools, they were putting in a concerted effort to take him out. After only 5 rounds, Jack had a paltry 2 dice remaining to him. Not that this was dampening his enthusiasm in the slightest, in fact, quite the contrary. While the civil war on the other side of the table raged, Tommy was trying his best to hold on to his dice. He was also gunning to get someone out, but he had an entirely different target in mind. Jack started this round, having just been relieved of his 3rd die, and it seemed that he was going for the Hail Mary. 8 3s, he slurred. With 25 dice remaining, that was already a pretty large sum. I like 3s. Kay nodded. 3s are good. Actually, looking down at his own dice, 3s are probably not good. Tommy only had 1. Unless there were a lot more of them that he didn't know about, that wasn't a safe bet. And for his plan to work out... Kay. He stared directly at her, across the table. 4s are a much safer bet. And just why do you say that? She narrowed her eyes. I don't know, but do you think I'm lying? They held each other's gaze for a few seconds. Then Kay's mouth tightened, but she sighed and said, 9 4s. 10. 10 4s. Kuro added immediately. Looks like Tommy had been right. Horse shit, Flora interjected. Tommy's the biggest liar there is. I bet he doesn't even have any. Yet, when they turned over their cups, there were exactly 10 4s. Interestingly, there were only 8 3s. If Kay had upped that bet, Kuro could have called bullshit. But instead, she'd chosen to listen to him. A look passed between the two of them. Tommy's plan was going off without a hitch. He and Kay seemed to have a tacit understanding, and Flora had already lost 1 die. His plan continued to work. Kay's target quickly switched to Flora as well. They couldn't let her get the dice advantage at all costs. As soon as she lost 1, she became a little flustered and quickly lost more. Now, with only 19 dice left at the table, she had only 2, which made her tied with Jack for first loser. It was time to do something ballsy. It would be worth potentially losing a die to throw her entirely off her game. He was just waiting for the right round. 3 4s, Bake started, and Tommy knew his time had come. 4 3s, Jack responded. He'd been playing a bit more conservatively, if only to make it to the halfway point. Kay paused for just a second. She was about to lie. Tommy couldn't always tell, but at times like this, when she had her guard slightly down, she tended to cock her eyebrow just a bit. 4 5s. So she had no 5s, and Tommy only had 1. Between the two of them, they had over a third of the dice. Nope, it's 4s. Kuro shook his head. 5 4s. That was exactly the move Tommy wanted him to make. Now to see what Flora would do. She looked under her cup for a moment, frowning. 6 5s. Tommy couldn't contain his giddiness. Bullshit, he said, and laughed as the whole table expressed its disbelief. There's still 19 dice. Kuro almost stood up, and Kay put her face in her hands. Bake and Jack were practically falling into each other as they were laughing so hard. Flora looked pretty steamed. If you're right, she said, I'll leave the table. I'll be done. There's just no way. The rest of the table chorused back to her. Well, I guess we'll see, huh? Tommy leaned forward, trying to do his best impression of Jack or Bake. It helped his nerves inside. Just a bit. They counted at the 5s, and after an incredulous second of silence, laughter erupted as Flora threw both her dice into the center. This is so stupid, she scowled. I need another drink. Anyone want a refill? The entire table raised their hands. After that, Jack dropped out pretty quickly as well, and with the 2 most dominating playstyles gone, the game became much more perilous. Usually Kuro got pushed around by the more gutsy players, but with Kay and Tommy as his main competition, his logical number crunching was actually working in his favor. The two of them could bullshit all they wanted, but if he just ignored them and trusted the numbers, he was wrong less often than they were. Tommy was honestly starting to get a little nervous. Both he and Kay had 3 dice each to Kuro's 4, and Bake, the only troublemaker left, was down to just 1. Luckily, his hand this round was excellent. A 1 and 2 6s. He could maybe fuck around a bit with another number if given the chance, but he could confidently say that he could bet pretty high on 6s. He also had something else to rely on. He could pretty consistently tell what Kay had. That probably went both ways, but they seemed to have come to a tacit, unspoken agreement to not hide their tells. Kay was also quite happy about her hand, it seemed, because her shoulders tensed and she let out a little sigh. She always got stressed when she had something good, like she was afraid she'd waste it. It was her turn to start the round. She inhaled deeply and said, 4 3s. Kay probably did not have any 3s. 5 6s. Bake kicked back in his chair. With only 1 die, at this point he was just fucking around. Any other time Tommy would have called him, but this actually put him in a bad position. If Bake actually had a 6, or a 1, and there was a very good chance there were 5 6s at the table, Tommy's best bet was to up to 6 6s. Kuro would probably call him out, but with a little luck, he'd be right. Tommy, Kay interrupted. Don't go with 6s. Go 4s. I have all 4s. The rest of the room blinked at her skeptically. Had she just revealed her hand? Is she allowed to do that? Flora asked. Nothing in the rules against it, Jack shrugged. Besides, She's probably lying anyway. Tommy stared at her for a good solid minute, and she stared back. Kay lied about everything. It was true. It was kind of her thing. But something about her steady gaze told him to trust her. 6 4s, he said finally, and Kuro shook his head. You fell right into her trap, and I'm calling you. But when they revealed their dice, Bake had a 1, Tommy had a 1, Kuro had a 4, and Kay had 3 4s, just like she'd said. She glanced sideways at him, the smallest smirk on her face, and Tommy knew exactly what they were about to do. They spent the next few rounds confusing the shit out of both Bake and Kuro. They simply just started telling each other what they had. Of course, they both threw in some bullshit ones, but only the other knew when they were lying. Since he was already drunk off his ass, their strategy worked very well on Bake, who lost his last dice almost immediately. But Kuro wasn't so easily fooled. He kept to his strategy of simply tuning them out and was relying almost entirely on his own dice and probability at large. Ultimately, he was proving too much for them. After a few rounds, Kay was down to 2 dice and Tommy just 1, while Kuro still had 3. Tommy wanted to wipe that damn saintly calm off his face, but it didn't look like that was in the cards, or dice for him today. He just rolled a 4. Well, Kay, we're fucked, he said. And why's that? She asked. I've got a fucking 4. Yeah, wow, we really are screwed. I've got 2 5s. Based on the way her eyes moved back and forth calculating something, Kay had at least 1 4, but probably only 1. They might have a shot, but not a big one. My go, right? Tommy asked, and Kuro nodded, his face pure stone. All right, 1 4 it is then. I want to see what Kuro does. Kay smirked. 2 4s. The corner of Kuro's mouth rose, just a fraction. Ultimately, what the two of you have doesn't matter in the slightest. 3 2s. Oh shit. Either Kuro had gotten a really good hand, or he had suddenly decided to play ballsy. Tommy was kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. He could keep at the 4s and hope Kuro had a lot of 1s, but if he did and was right, Kay would definitely lose this round. Tommy, call 4s, she said quietly. But that wasn't really his style. Besides, she had a better chance of winning than he did anyway. Sorry, Kay, he smiled. Good luck. Bullshit, Kuro. I am very sorry to say that was definitely not bullshit. Kuro lifted his cup to reveal a 1 and 2 2s. Tommy calmly placed his die in the center and got it from the table. Then he placed 2 hands on Kay's shoulders. She tensed but didn't pull away, and said, Kill him for me, will ya? She chuckled. I'll try my best. Her best, however, might not have been good enough. At least not with her infamously abysmal luck. 2 rounds later, she was down to 1 die, though she had managed to cut Kuro down to 2. This could potentially be the last round, and the tension was rather stew-like in its consistency. From over her shoulder, Tommy glanced under her cup as she did, and saw 1 6. Not great. But he'd see what she'd do. Alas, it was Kuro's turn first, and he was cool as a cucumber as he shook his wings out a little and said, 2 6s. That was the worst thing he could have said, because it put Kay in an extremely perilous situation, even more than he knew. Even if he was lying and he only had 1 6, with Kay's, that would still make 2. Which meant it would be better for her to raise the bet. Kuro didn't often lie. He was probably trying to get her to call him. Tommy's mind started going in circles, but Kay's didn't. Either that or her brain just worked a lot faster than his did. 3 6s. If he wasn't lying, she had it. I guess we'll see. He chuckled, but as he revealed his dice, everyone gasped. Because Kuro had no 6s at all. The table broke into madness, and it took a long time for everyone to calm down. Kuro was brought another drink, and he certainly looked proud of himself. However, it wasn't long before the end of the game devolved into recounting exploits and drunken ramblings. At one point, Cowell came back from whatever he'd been doing and joined them, and it looked like the party wouldn't be ending anytime soon. Kay seemed a little distant from the fun, however, and Bake made fun of her for being a sore loser, but just a few minutes later, her eyes met Tommy's, and he knew what was up. He made his excuses, went out for a second to get some air, and waited. It didn't take long for Kay to join him. They stood in silence for a minute, staring up at the green and purple sky, before Tommy broke it. You're new body," he said, still not quite sure how to act about it. "It looks good. Feels more like you than the last one." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. I just didn't like that Kay very much." He was half expecting her to correct him, tell him that he was being ridiculous and that Kay was just as much Kay as this current one was, but she just let out a big puff of air and shook her head. "Look, about what happened the last time we met. You mean you murdering a teenager in cold blood and trying to become an evil overlord? I'm not going to apologize for what I did." Her face tightened, "because I'm not sorry. But the way I treated you wasn't fair. It wasn't. But in your defense, I was the one who called you a stranger. She really had to struggle to get the words out. "I'm sorry." "I am too." That hung in the air for a minute, and it felt like just a bit of the tension was gone. "And I know that things can't just go back to the way they were between us, but you did promise to show me the cosmos, you know." Tommy felt his own face light up. You mean you'll... She shook her finger at him. "I'm not running away with you. I've got a job, you know. But I don't think the city's going to fall apart if I take a vacation." Kay was still so different now than when he'd known her. There would be a lot to get used to. Yet just for a little bit, he saw the old her peeking through. "All right," he said. "It's a deal." She smiled back. "You know how much I love those."